Good afternoon, everybody. How y'all doing? All right, fantastic. I think I'm finishing off the day, but thank you for the invitation for me to come here and speak with you about Proposition 36 and public safety in general. So when it comes to public safety, what we shouldn't be doing is just reacting. Instead, we should be restoring and rebuilding. And I've talked about this again and again. We need people to power the progress. And the people in this room power the progress when it comes to public safety, making sure that our streets stay safe and clean. So in regards to Proposition 36, we saw a shift in the momentum. But before we get to that shift, I want to talk about the shift that happened 10 years ago. In 2014, the state of California passed Proposition 47. And what it did, Proposition 47, its intent, the heart of it, was at a good place, trying to reduce incarceration. But it did a couple of things that negatively affected public safety. First and foremost, what it did was, if you committed a prior theft offense in California, the second time you get convicted, it's a felony. The other thing that it did was for certain sets of drug possessions, cocaine, methamphetamine, crack cocaine, heroin, those charges were felonies. And what do we do with charging somebody? It was not for the purpose of putting somebody in prison, but rather it was to get them the treatment they needed. We had a robust drug court system in California where we had people that were going through drug court, getting the treatment they needed, and back out on the streets again with their families. And so what happened was it took away that felony possession, so we no longer had the leverage to encourage people to get the treatment they needed. Fast forward 10 years later, we have rampant retail theft, we have drug addiction, and we have homelessness in the state of California. And I'll give you an example here in Sacramento. Homelessness increased in Sacramento from 2016 to 2022 by 250%. 250%, the highest rate anywhere in the country. Coming to Sacramento, you see people out on the streets and encampments. My office is located downtown. I had employees that would get assaulted walking to court. I had jurors that were being chased by some unhoused person with a handful of needles trying to stab them. I had arsons that were happening. And let me say this, homelessness should never be criminalized. But the fact of the matter is that 8 out of 10 people that are chronically homeless on the street for more than a year, suffer from mental health and drug addiction. So how do we get them off the street? Because it is not compassionate to let them die on the streets. It is not compassionate to let them wallow in despair on the streets. We wouldn't do that to our worst enemies, much less our brothers and sisters. And so we saw that here in Sacramento, but we saw it down in LA. We see it down in San Diego. We see it in Oakland. We see it in San Francisco and so many places across the state. And in the meantime, our businesses are suffering. I was talking to the head of Walmart here in Sacramento in the region. And there's a Walmart store in South Sacramento that had a 250% increase in theft in 1 year. 250%. There is a Container Store in Sacramento that is the #1 location for theft in the entire country. I have a small business owner. His name is Andy. Andy owns a convenience store in the corner of 65th and Stockton. And he told me that 6 out of 10 people walking in and out of his business are stealing from him. Now, how are you supposed to stay in business? All we're doing is reacting instead of restoring and rebuilding. And so part of that was a combination of the efforts in the legislature. And I commend Rachel and I commend our legislators for passing a package of bills related to retail theft that we have used that is effective, but we need more tools. And what are those tools? Proposition 36. And Proposition 36 represent a shift in the public safety climate in California towards the middle. And here's the thing. Public safety is not about politics. It's not about nonsense. It's about common sense. It's not about going right or going left. It's about moving forward. That's what the conversation about public safety should always be. And so when it came to Proposition 36, the voters of the state of California passed it in nearly every single county, the 58 counties, by almost 70% across the board. That is a singular message to our leaders and to our communities about where our priorities are. And they should be in public safety, but in a fair, measured manner. And what do I mean fair and measured? So Proposition 36 has three main components that I'm going to break down to you and also explain how we are implementing it in a way that isn't reactionary here in Sacramento. So the first that it deals with is retail theft. What it does is this. If you have 2 prior convictions for petty theft, the third is a felony. It doesn't matter how much you steal. It could be $5, it could be $500. If you have 2 prior convictions, the third is a felony. And then what it does is it allows us to aggregate, to combine together multiple cases to get over the 950 mark. Now, what we are doing here in Sacramento is this. In Sacramento, we are top 5 in the state of California in terms of charging retail theft under Proposition 36. And we have seen a reduction on retail theft here. And what does that mean exactly? So when an officer is out there, the store employee, the businesses, because they know that there is the possibility of a felony, that they will call the police, and the police will come. Because a component of Proposition 36, and this is key, because when it used to be a misdemeanor, you know what would happen? The officer would show up, if he did, right? Arrest somebody, if he did, write a citation and release them. Because that's what happens on a misdemeanor. And the person that gets that little piece of paper, do you think they show up in court? To them, it's worth like a piece of toilet paper. We have over 40,000 failures to appear in Sacramento, and that is consistent with across the state. But when you get arrested for a felony petty theft under Proposition 36, the law says you must get taken into custody. You must get taken to jail. And within 24 hours, the judge must review your custodial status. So that if you deserve to get out, then you get out. But if not, then you stay in. So because of that, we have seen a reduction in retail theft here in Sacramento. But where we are also trying to make headways are the small businesses. The big box retailers, the big malls are seeing a reduction, but it's the small businesses. So as part of our effort on Proposition 36, and my colleague in LA has copied me, and he said that it was the greatest form of flattery is copying. But what we did was we created these stickers. All right, it says warning, right? And it's about theft. And we give this out for free. I gave out 3,000 of these for free in a matter of a week. And it says warning, this is a protected business. The business is protected by the Sacramento County's Retail Theft Initiative, right? And people put this up on there. So I had food for less. They took and they put 20 of these over by the meat area, all right? And theft went down. Because there is a difference between stealing 1 steak versus 20 filet mignons. And so what I do here as well is I want to be measured in my approach. If you are stealing for personal sustenance, like a sandwich, I'm not going to hit you with a felony. Okay, but there is a difference, like I said, between 1 steak and 20 fillets, right? And so if it's for personal sustenance, we charge a misdemeanor and we get them the services they can. But for everybody else, we charge them with a felony. And so recently we did what we call a blitz operation along with the police force agency. They went into a Safeway and they caught somebody stealing 1 item. They followed that person out, and because of Proposition 36, they were able to arrest them for a felony. They were able to take them into custody, and they found over $600 worth of goods that that person had stolen from another Safeway. And that person was reselling it on Facebook Marketplace. Now, I'm not on the Marketplace, so I don't know, but they were on the Marketplace, and they were a very highly rated reseller, right? Because they were that prolific. And so when you look at it, we were able to hold her in custody and accountable. Now, we do this, and if anybody wants one of these, just contact me, and I'm going to leave them up here. There's a QR code, and it'll take you to a website from my office where retailers and business people can learn about Proposition 36, and they can also report crimes online after the fact. And they can request one of these stickers. And I'll leave this as well as a QR code on a card, and we hand them out to businesses, and they can do the QR code and get the resources they need. So these are some of the things that we are doing here in Sacramento on the retail theft side. Now, the other component of Proposition 36 deals with fentanyl. And fentanyl is particularly dangerous. So in 2023, we had 460 people die from fentanyl overdose in Sacramento. 460 people. That is more than all the gun-related homicides in the county in the last 10 years. And the two greatest groups of increased death in fentanyl are the unhoused. First is overdose. It's not, that's number one. Number two, cause of death, what do you think it is? Exposure? That was way down on the list. Number two was blunt force trauma. That was number two. The other group of people that were facing the largest increase in fentanyl deaths were kids between the ages of 14 and 21. Our kids, our grandkids. And what's happening is, and go back to COVID. Schools were shut down. Everybody came in at home. A lot of anxiety happened because of that. And the other area of anxiety is the kids these days on social media, right? It creates a lot of anxiety in our kids. And so what do? They turn to Percocet, Xanax. But they won't ask us for help because they're ashamed or embarrassed. So they talk to their friends, and so they hop on Instagram or they hop on Snapchat, and they reach out to a drug dealer who sells them supposedly Xanax. But 99% of the drugs that are being sold out in the streets are counterfeit, and 99% of the counterfeit drugs have fentanyl in it. And all it takes is a few grains of fentanyl to kill you. If I had a packet's worth of sugar of fentanyl, okay, here, it'd be enough to kill 500 people. We seized enough fentanyl last year in the state of California to kill every single person on the face of the earth. And we can do interdiction all we want. Sheriff Jim Cooper and I recently did a press conference with the regional task force. Over the last 9 months, we have seized over 200,000 fentanyl pills in this area and over 100 pounds of fentanyl. That's enough to kill 26 million people, or the population of Taiwan. That has a street value of $6 million. So we can do all the interdiction we want, but we also do education, the One Pill Can Kill program. And what are we doing with that? We go to the high schools and we educate the kids that one pill can kill, and that is having an effect. We recently had a case in Folsom, and it's very heartbreaking. There was a young man. Let me rephrase. It was a child. He was 14. He had just graduated from junior high. And he's there, and there was another kid who was 16 who went over and was trying to sell him some drugs. The other kids there and outside told him, don't buy it, don't do it, don't buy the drugs from him. It's got fentanyl in it. They went over to the drug dealer. The 16-year-old said, don't do it. Don't sell it. What are you doing? You're going to kill people. Unfortunately, the 16-year-old got the 14-year-old separated, sold him the drugs. He took it and he died. His parents found him the next day. And when the police department interviewed, and remember, we are doing these One Pill Can Kill programs in all the high schools, reaching like 100,000 people. The detective is interviewing one of the girls who's a witness, and the detective says, you know these counterfeit pills, 8 out of 10 of them have fentanyl in them. And she looked at him and she says, what are you talking about? 10 out of 10 of them have fentanyl in them. We were able to get to her, and it saved her life. But we don't have the program in junior high, and we hadn't had the program yet in that high school. So I'm expanding the program to junior high now, because one pill can kill, and we need to save every life we can. But the other thing that Proposition 36 did for us was it allowed us to go after the dealers. It had enhancements on weights, if you have a gun. And the other thing it did was when you get when you get convicted of selling drugs, the judge gives you an admonishment, a warning. It says that if you still continue to sell drugs and you kill somebody, you can be charged with murder. We call that the Watson advisement under the Watson case. If you drive and you have like 2 or 3 DUIs, the judge will tell you, sir, if you continue to drive drunk, it's really dangerous to human life, and if you kill somebody, you can be charged with second-degree murder. So before I came into office 3 years ago, my office had never prosecuted anybody for selling fentanyl that killed somebody. Since then, and with the help of Proposition 36, we have charged 12 people for murder, including an individual that sold and killed 2 people, one in Elk Grove and one in Folsom. And last week, we had our first conviction. So I've charged 12 people for murder. And I will tell you this, that number was 460 2 years ago. Last year, it dropped down to 230-something. And this year, halfway through the year, we have 41 people that have died from fentanyl poisoning. It is making a significant difference with Proposition 36 and other tools that we have to do this. And we started as well with what I call the SAC Force team. So the SAC Force team, what happens, and this is interesting, and many of you are parents, such as myself as well. So if there's a call from the coroner of an overdose, what the SAC Force team does is it goes out to the scene. It collects the cell phone of the victim. We ask the family, what's the password code? We get into the phone. We identify the dealer. We then tell the family member, please don't post on social media or tell anybody that your loved one died. And then what they do is they get on that phone and they contact and they text the dealer. They talk about the drug deal. They set up another drug deal. And then when that drug deal happens, they arrest the individual. So we use that technique to catch these drug dealers. And that's why we're charging and being successful and sending a message. Now, what I'm going to be proposing in the next year or so is I'm going to create a data dashboard of all the hot spots of the overdoses in the county so that anybody can go on there and look. We're going to try to really marshal AI, right, to predict where the trends are in terms of the drug deals and the overdose and send out an alert to the community. And the other thing is, I think we need to have a registry, like you have a sex registry, right? Sexual offenders. Well, if you're selling drugs and you're killing people, you should be on a drug registry so people know. Now, you could earn your way off of it by turning your life around. And that's a way for people to have redemption, but you have to start with accountability. So that's what we're doing on the fentanyl aspect of Proposition 36. And the middle part of it deals with our unhoused crisis. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, 8 out of 9, 10 people that are homeless for more than a year have mental health and substance abuse issues. So what do we do with that? Well, as I told you, we had a 250% increase in Sacramento. So as some of you may or may not heard, I came to the city of Sacramento and I asked them, please do something about it. They have all these laws in the books about enforcing ordinances regarding our unhoused, keeping the streets clear, not starting fires, not storing your personal property on public property. And what I found out was that the city of Sacramento had not enforced a single one of them for over a year. So I gave them a chance to clean it up and they didn't, so I sued the city of Sacramento, the first and only DA in the country to sue their own city to enforce its own laws. And we identified 16 different major encampments in the city in terms of what was happening. Little girls couldn't play soccer on the field because of the needles, right? We had people that couldn't get into the house because there was an encampment there. We had a woman that was going through chemotherapy, and people from the encampment who were selling drugs threatened to rape her and burn down her house. So we had to do something. And so we did it under what we call the public nuisance law. If you own private property and you allow drug dealing, human trafficking, crime to occur on your property, what the city's going to do is it's going to send you a letter and say, sir, what's your name, by the way? Steve. Steve, I'm going to use this example. Steve, you need to clean up this property. You need to stop allowing the crime to occur on your property, or we're going to sue you for creating a public nuisance. We're going to prosecute you criminally or sue you civilly. Here's a chance for you to clean it up, Steve. And if Steve doesn't, they'll go after you. Well, I utilize the same process upon the city itself. I said, city of Sacramento, these are 16 encampments. You are allowing a public nuisance. You got to clean it up. If you don't, I'm either going to criminally prosecute you or sue you. So I ended up suing them. And so we're in mediation right now. But what I will tell you is this, is those 16 encampments are all clear. All right? What I would tell you is that they have now enforced the law to a greater extent. And every time that they're out there enforcing the law and making contact, they're offering services and shelter. But many people are rejecting the services and shelter because they are in the throes of addiction and they are not thinking clearly. So how do we help them think clearly? With Proposition 36. Because in Proposition 36, it makes the drug possession, if you have 2 prior, the third is a felony. So with a felony hanging over your head, you are more likely to get the help that you need. And where did this really come from? So I grew up in the Bay Area, but I've been here in Sacramento for 20 years. So I did a little tour of San Francisco, and I've lived in the city in the inner Sunset. And I met with a gentleman by the name of Tom Wolf. So Tom Wolf worked for the city of Sacramento as an employee there. He had foot surgery. He ended up addicted on opioids, on heroin, and then fentanyl. He lost both his kids and his wife, and he ended up on the streets living in the Tenderloin. And he showed me this little doorway where he slept in front of, right? And by the time I met Tom, he was back with his family. And I asked Tom, how'd you get from here back to your family? And he said, see over there? You got the drug dealers over here and the drug users. And you see how the smoke is blowing back and forth? And we had just walked through that gauntlet. And I walked through that gauntlet with Jim Cooper right behind me. He was the newly elected sheriff. And he had his gun with him, right, his concealed. And we walked through them, we came back. And Tom told me that the only reason he got off the street was because he was carrying dope. He was a mule for some of those drug dealers. And as a result of doing that, he got caught. And he got put in jail for 90 days. And he was able to sober up, think clearly, and get into the treatment he needed. So he says, you know what? Redemption starts with accountability. Treatment starts with accountability. And so with Proposition 36, if you were just facing a misdemeanor crime, and you just do 30 days, or you have to go into a year-long treatment program, right? And you're homeless, you're going to pick the path of least resistance. You're going to take the 30 days, and the hell with the treatment that's going to take a year, right? But if we have greater, stiffer penalties, not to put people in prison, because I don't want to put any of them in prison or jail. I just want them to get back with their families and in a home. But if now you're facing a felony, that hangs over your head, and you get the treatment you need. And how did that end up happening here in Sacramento? So I have a gentleman, I'll call him Michael. Michael is down here in Sacramento, in the core area. And a year ago, if you were here, you would have met Michael. You would have seen him because he'd be defecating somewhere. He'd be peeing somewhere. He'd be shooting up somewhere. He'd be breaking into a store somewhere. And it was a constant cycle of arrest and release, and more crime. So utilizing Proposition 36 and our core program, we were able to package those cases together, arrest Michael, and put him in jail. And with that extra penalty hanging over his head, we gave him an option of treatment, and he took it. He went through that treatment. And now he's back with his family, and he's actually trying to get other people off the streets. That is a way where we are not reacting, but we are restoring and rebuilding. So those are some of the things that we are doing there in regards to the unhoused crisis. And I'll say this again. We talk about how do we grapple with this, all right? Because I hear that, you know, we need affordable housing. We do. And I will say this, is that I think, just looking ahead, we need to reduce the regulations that prevent people from readily and inexpensively building. It's too expensive to build. It's too expensive to run a business. It is too expensive to really live here in California. We need to get that cost down. We need less regulations, not more regulations. And so we're going to keep working in that area of trying to do that. But Proposition 36 has been an immense tool and help for us. So that's kind of the basis of really coming before you and talking about this whole entire scope of public safety from a perspective of Proposition 36. And know that we go to this place together. I've often said this. I've said it again and again, that if you want to go fast, go alone. And it's that old African proverb, if you want to go far, go together. So stay informed, stay educated, speak up, stand up. You have such a powerful voice, not only here in Sacramento, but in your own community in the state of California. Use that voice. Make that voice heard. And I will be standing here with you every step of the way, because a rising tide lifts all ships. Thank you very much.